like if I look outside my window right now, there's like this beautiful forest that's right outside of here. Um, I think that silence and time are can be really good therapists and can be really good teachers. Or like if someone has a partner, I would say your best therapist is your partner because they're just going to mirror everything that's going on with you. Um, but what we like to do is just create containers outside of that where people can just access different material that's kind of going on for them.
Yeah. So what do you think it means to be a good man? What's what?
So I came from the public health sector. So I worked in international public health. I was in the Peace Corps. I worked for the CDC and just kind of working abroad. And um, so I actually switched careers later on in life. So I went to become a therapist. I'm 42, and I decided I want to be a therapist at age 35. But up until that point, I felt like what I was doing for my job in public health, I felt like the thing that they were paying me for wasn't actually kind of what I was doing. I've always been really interested ever since I was a kid in like very intimate interpersonal interactions. Um, and I've always been like I was a really curious kid, and I think I'm just a very deeply curious person. And the really intimate interpersonal interactions were always the stuff that kind of just I don't know how else to describe it, kind of got my life force going and got me moving and really interested in things. Um, so I decided later on to become a therapist. Um, and once I kind of started into that work, I noticed that there was kind of this dichotomy that was happening, which I would call like the masculine and the feminine. And I noticed these were questions that I always internalized around when I looked at like the traditional masculine with men, like why aren't men having these really intimate conversations, ones that require a lot of depth. I'm generalizing a bit, but ones that requiring a lot of depth and a lot of vulnerability, and putting this emphasis on community and witnessing each other. Because I guess I would describe to my friends, well, they would probably say this about me, is I'm kind of a walking contradiction in terms of what society would say between like what's masculine and feminine. Um, and I was always I've always been kind of interested in what prior society would deem as like really sensitive, intimate, like vulnerable conversations. Um, anyway, kind of fast forward, becoming a therapist is a lot of the individual work I do, ironically, is with women. Um, but I noticed I started having a lot of mentors. A lot of mentors tell me like, "Hey, you should do men's work and you should do men's group work." And my question is like, when someone asks what men's work is, I'm like, it's so broad. Like, I don't really know how to define it. I'd be curious what you think about that. And I noticed that a lot of men started coming to me, both like clinically in the therapy world, and then just like this unconscious thing that was happening in the other world saying, hey, you should do a men's group. And usually I'm like a rule of three person, but like by the time the 30th or 40th man asked me to run a men's group, um, I just kind of heeded that call and I paid attention to it. Um, yeah, so I started Haven Men's Group. And like the reason I called it Haven is because I had, I was trying to think of names and kind of what to call it. And I had this image like when I was a kid, where I was like sitting on this harbor, and I noticed like how sailboats would come into the harbor. Um, they would have to slow down and they would have to pay attention. And there's like this quiet kind of meditative thing that's happening to kind of guide them back in. And I had like these multiple dreams about it. And I just thought like, okay, well, this could be like a haven for men to come and just show up as they are. Um, Whether it's men who I mean, we get anyone from like combat veterans with pretty complex PTSD to men that have like seasoned therapy goers to men that just want someone to talk to. So it's kind of, I don't know, I guess I could start there and say like it's pretty broad, but yeah, I could take that in a lot of different directions. But the
Yeah,
origin story, I guess in short, is um, I just I feel like I'm good at disarming men because I know what it's like to go through my own shit. I know what it's like to struggle with um, like these layers that we put on ourselves as men, uh, these stereotypes we put on ourselves, and like these pressures. But yeah, kind of
cool.
broad. But
No,
let's
I
start
appreciate you sharing, and I love the visual of the harbor because in my mind I was thinking like as the boat's coming in, it's also like super aware of all the other boats in the harbor and has
there.
to be like really thoughtful about positioning. And I think one of the powerful things about men's work, and I'm curious what you think about the like micro interactions of like intimacy and vulnerability, where it kind of when you see that happening for another man, it gives you permission to do it as well, where you might not have been able to do it solo.
Yeah,
Um, so like I think that social element of like, okay, everyone's here kind of pursuing this together, and like this is okay. Like that group element is a really cool, powerful tool for like both community and for doing the work because it kind of gives you permission to do the work. So yeah, that's a really cool visual.
yeah, yeah. Well said. I love how you just praised that as well. I think, do you know who Francis Weller is?
No.
Highly recommend Francis Weller. So he's this really brilliant psychologist, and he really specializes in group work or like grief. I'd say like grief work,
Hmm.
and and our next one is actually the theme is going to be around grief because I'm like, we're all grieving something in a way, like a sense of self, the relationship that we didn't have, the relationship we lost, friendships. And Francis Weller speaks a lot on how important it is to grieve or to be witnessed in community. And the way that he describes it is that we have this fire inside of us that needs to be gently like stoked, and it always needs to be tended to at all times. And if we don't tend to that fire, that it can congeal and it can make us harden and it can turn us into like kind of like these bitter men. And I think about that a lot, and so like in terms of what you were saying. And one of the things we talk about, we have kind of a framework, and I'd say kind of guidelines and rules of how to
Hmm.
keep the container safe. And one of the things we talk about before men decide to come into our groups is, the cliche of you're going to get out of this like what you put into it. And in terms of that, is that when you kind of feel like that fire or something inside like wants to be witnessed, just think about that as medicine. That if you share that, it's like what you said, it's giving someone else to share and giving them permission to, and then things just kind of start flowing because we can get so in our head. We get that anxiety when, oh, I think I want to share this thing, but I'm going to be judged. Men have a tendency to be really competitive with each other, or but I think once those walls start coming down, this kind of this organic alchemical process starts happening, and it starts breathing life into the group.
Yeah, yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. What what like what need is the group work fulfilling for guys? Like what is a common like driver for seeking out, and then a common like this is filling me up somehow.
Yeah.
Like what is it filling?
I think it's filling a need just to be part of something, to not be alone, to not be in isolation, um, to be a theme that we notice with a lot of the men that come to that a lot of men that come to our groups is they have something that's kind of churning inside of them, and they're struggling with something and they don't know how to put words to it yet. I think with a lot of these men, it's filling a need of just community and someone to listen from from a perspective that's safe and not judgmental, because a lot of the men that we get in our groups are men who have been struggling for a long time. I'd call them with like silent battles. And it's the first time not only that they've been able to talk about something that maybe they have shame around or something that they're hurting about, it's the first time that they're talking and no one's trying to fix them. They're just witnessing them. And that distinct difference between like, and one of the things we always share is like we're not here to fix you, we're here to witness you, and we're here to hold you energetically in that container to help you come up with the maybe to help you and just hold up a mirror of like either solutions or things that you can do for yourself moving forward. Because at the end of the
Hmm.
day, it's like I don't believe, and one of the things we say is like you're not broken. I think you're going through some hard shit that life will inevitably do. But we're here not to put shame around these experiences that are so common among men.
Yeah. And how do you flip? So like vulnerability is a double-sided coin where like it's really hard and takes a lot of strength. So is a sign of bravery, but is so not rewarded and to the point it can be punished in society for being vulnerable. How do you kind of break down, or not break down, or encourage seeing vulnerability as a sign of strength and hard work and bravery and like being proactive and taking action?
Sure. Yeah, that's a really good question. I think it's hard and it's a little bit nuanced, kind of dependent on the individual. And like in terms of breaking it down, I think one thing that we work to do is to just to normalize it, and we try to set an example. Um, Usually, have you been a part of a lot of men's groups?
Not in like the official sense. I've organized a couple like mini ones,
Sure.
but I haven't joined like a, I don't know. Well, I guess they're official. If
Sure.
it's a group of men, it's official.
Yeah, that's the thing. We get back to the beginning. It's so broad. It could be buddies
Yeah,
just
exactly.
sitting around a living room.
Yeah.
Um, Yeah, again, I think that's a really good question. I think the thing that we look at in terms of okay, like how do we speak around? We actually did a group, and this was the subject of all of our sessions. Um, they're all going to be like in such different places. So I guess
Mhm.
the first thing we do is try to model that. So me and the other facilitators are thinking will kind of demonstrate like, okay, well, we can't hold this container if we aren't willing to do this kind of work ourselves. So that's
Mhm.
one thing that's kind of foundational with anyone that's kind of wants to help with these groups is like you have to do your own work or
Mhm.
you can't facilitate this. Um, because I think men will just kind of pick up on that, either usually, I don't even want to say unconsciously, just consciously can tell like this guy's full of shit, right? But I think that I know what it's like to struggle with that. I know what it's like to struggle with the judgments and the criticisms of being vulnerable. Um, in terms of that, we really just try to have this message that like vulnerability is strength. So the first thing we do around that is kind of we will work with each men individually within the group and kind of deconstruct like what vulnerability means to them to have a thorough understanding of where each person is coming from around that. Because for some men, maybe they grew up in an environment, because sometimes again we'll get like seasoned people, whatever that means. I'd say people that are a little bit more used to this work and they can just demonstrate like, hey, I can be vulnerable. And even if I'm judged, it's kind of part of the deal. And with other men, I mean, vulnerability could be deemed as like not being safe. Maybe if they were shared, maybe they were manipulated, maybe they went through emotional abuse, maybe they went through physical abuse. Um, but again, going back to the first thing that we do is just demonstrate it ourselves. And then we think we work with the individuals, okay, like what barriers are there for you specifically around vulnerability? And how can we witness what those barriers are? Like, for example, if we have a men that's like, we have a lot of men that are terrified to be vulnerable. We go in with a lot of kind of ethos we have is we stay curious and compassionate, and we just ask these men, okay, like, well, what would it be like to be vulnerable? And I've also noticed that a lot of men aren't comfortable being vulnerable in front of like 10 to 12 other men right away. So we do cohort models so they can build kind of that intimacy amongst each other. And so a lot of times we'll break them into pairs or smaller groups and have them do exercises throughout the next couple months where they'll share amongst each other individually, and then they have the option to share like as a group. So it's kind of like slowly kind of leading them into it rather than I'd call it like telling them to trauma dump
Hmm.
or them coming because I don't think that's safe or coming to the group is we don't want them to feel pressured to share or to be vulnerable. We just want to work to create the container where again I go back to like that word alchemy. We just want to create a container where it's supported that if they want to be vulnerable, they can. And what usually happens is from the first session they're kind of quiet, and so the facilitators will kind of step in a little bit more. But what this really beautiful process has been happening. Like I use that image of like these sailboats kind of coming in. It's kind of like pushing them out. Is like a small tweak, like on a sailboat to get to a destination, can end up at a completely different place. And we kind of look at it as like kind of pushing them a little bit at the beginning, and then they can kind of take hold because by the last session, the group kind of runs itself and they're all kind of almost like talking over each other to be vulnerable. And at the first one, it's like, okay, how do we get this going?
I mean, it's really cool to hear you talk so thoughtfully about it because it's really helpful for the audience to hear like your ethos on like what is a healthy and productive way to facilitate this men's group for men looking to find a men's group in their area. Like, how do I tell if it's trustworthy and safe and effective? Or have like a goal of spinning up their own like a kind of baseline for what is a yeah, healthy and effective men's group. So really valuable to get your take and thesis on like how you run it. So I appreciate you sharing that. I'm curious about like the social aspects of well, because that's kind of it, it's like a companion to like doing the work and sharing and kind of investigating yourself, but you're also connecting with other men. And I don't know the exact age that you're working with, but I'm assuming like adult men where like new friendships and like truly starting from scratch to like emotional connection and trust is probably a pretty new experience for guys, or at least so like so far in the rear view mirror that it's become new again. So I'm curious about how the social bonds kind of interplay with doing like the therapy work.
Sure, sure. That's such a good question. You ask such good questions.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, very like I really appreciate it. You're so good. So yeah, I think that that's kind of part of it. As I said, like I really feel it might be my kind of my clinical training and like mentorship that I've had is I do think that the group facilitates itself. And I think that's kind of part of the facilitating is like being mindful not to over facilitate, if that makes sense, and not to under facilitate. Right? We're human, like we make mistakes. We're always like, oh crap, we messed that up, or we should have done more there. But in terms of that social aspect, I think that's a big part of kind of what we're paying attention to as facilitators. Um, but also that's kind of why they're there. Like for example, to kind of hone that in is for example, this last group that we did was I'd say it was the most challenging group that we did, and it was around the concept of male friendships.
Mm.
Ones before that, we did like, okay, emotional intimacy. We did like barriers to physical intimacy, vulnerability. And this one, we were like, oh, okay. But the theme was male friendships, and it was the most challenging. I don't want to necessarily say from our end. I'd say like what the watching the men kind of interact with each other was really, really hard. And to me, that was really illuminating to like the importance of having these groups. I think that if I'm going to get on a soapbox for just 2 seconds and I'll step off, I think that I think that male friendships right now, and there's a lot of stuff that's like kind of going out about like and a lot of different opinions on what people would call like the male loneliness like epidemic. There's a lot of really strong opinions on both sides and on that. And what I say too, what I see just as a man is I do think a lot of men feel lonely, and I think a lot of men are like struggling to have like a couple of close like male friends, just someone they can rely on. And if you look at like basic attachment, is someone that will you be there when I need you? And can I talk openly without you criticizing me, without you trying to fix me, or without you getting competitive with me? And I think what we saw a lot in the last group, especially at the beginning, was those types of entanglements of men being really competitive with each other, men trying to one up each other, men trying to police each other. And again, it's kind of what I go back to the beginning, instead of men just witnessing each other. And again, it goes back to like us as facilitators trying to model what that looks like. And and also realizing that, some of these, we don't expect all these men to come out as like best friends,
Yeah.
because in retrospect, they're not spending a ton of time together. Our goal is just for them to come out and understand each other better, but mainly understand themselves better. Because with our groups and kind of the ways that we do it, it's like very Jungian, it's very depthy, which means like it's not easy. Like we tell people at the beginning when they sign up for it, we'll screen them and we'll say, hey, like this is going to be work and it's going to be hard, but at the end of the day, we'll say like if you commit and trust the process, you're going to understand yourself pretty well.
Hmm.
Part of that is we just look like, okay, maybe you had conflict with another man. I feel like I failed at doing my job if they don't understand why they have that conflict with other men, and to understand that and approach that with themselves with a curious, compassionate lens, because we don't want to force friendships, and we want to create like a sustainable, lasting impression of, like, for example, like in this last group, okay, it's male friendships, is I can say that the men walked away understanding where the barriers were for them around male friendships. And within that, like, yeah, you'll kind of see certain men click with other ones. You'll see other ones that are kind of pushing that aside. And again, what we'll go back to is like, okay, well, why do you feel like you're pushing that man aside? Or the other ones being like, why do you feel like you're accepting of that man? But again, we don't police that too much. We kind of just observe what's happening amongst men interacting with each other, and then we kind of point it out. And I guess like lastly is we'll have men walk away from the groups and hang out with each other and like stay in touch. And a couple men in the groups have done like kind of small reunions, or they've created groups within groups, and that's what they want to do. And there's other men that walked away of like, oh shit, like I push all these men away. And again, our job isn't to like get them to walk away and rainbows and daisies. It's just to say like, yeah, this is why I do this, and this is probably what I need help with moving forward.
Yeah. Yeah. It's an investigation of like, how do I make friends? Where do I push away? As opposed to writing it off. It's like, oh, I don't like that guy. It's like his stuff. Um,
Exactly.
it makes a lot of sense. Um, I want to switch gears a little bit to talk about like the more holistic approach and like getting in touch with nature. Like, how is that helpful? Particularly on like the male lens, like the group work has a lot of different elements. I'm assuming a lot of it is based on like conversational, like medium. Like you're talking, you're sharing, you're communicating, you're interacting with someone else. So how does like doing work more holistically in nature, more experiential? How is that different? How is it helpful? What is that like?
Sure. Great question, man. Well, I guess I would look at it like kind of look at it how I do kind of individual work isn't super different than group work. Um, Except group work, you're going to be a little bit more pointed because you don't have as much time together. Another word of saying I'm a little probably I'm probably a little bit more gentle with individuals, because group work, it's like we don't have a lot of time. Let's just kind of get this moving. In terms of holistic lens, I think talk work it's not for everybody.
Hmm.
Like, I don't think talk therapy is for everybody. And also, like, there's certain people with group work, they're like, I would never do that. They only want
Yeah.
to go there. So I think kind of what I do, like in my personal work, I just look like what's been really helpful for me and what I've learned through kind of just experience in academia and mentorship is we want to bring like more of a kind of a holistic lens of just different pieces that might work for different people. And it's kind of like these are kind of different things to see what can kind of poke at your unconscious and what can kind of get things moving. So what that could look like is anything from a co-facilitator I have. His name's Ian. He's brilliant. I adore him. So what Ian does, like for example, is I'm going to butcher it. He would explain a lot better. It's called forest bathing. Have you heard of it
I
before?
have, yeah.
Um, so he'll do that. He'll do that with the men. He'll do that with groups of men. We do anything, and again, like how I would do with like individuals is the same thing. Uh, like poetry. We'll read different poems from like Pablo Neruda. We'll do like a lot of mysticism, like Rumi, Hafez, things like that. We'll do kind of art therapy, like have them draw something that kind of gets stirred up. We'll do anything from like kind of different forms of meditation. Um, but the way that I kind of look at it, if we're looking at it holistically, is it can be so intense when you're talking with people one on one to have them to be able to access other things that are going on like outside of the group is just I don't know. I've just seen kind of profound effects like in individuals and groups because like if I look outside my window right now, there's like this beautiful forest that's right outside of here. Um, I think that silence and time are can be really good therapists and can be really good teachers. Or like if someone has a partner, I would say your best therapist is your partner because they're just going to mirror everything that's going on with you. Um, but what we like to do is just create containers outside of that where people can just access different material that's kind of going on for them.
Yeah. I mean, I love hearing like a menu because it's there's so many ways to do like investigative work on yourself. And I think exposure to certain mediums or modalities are pretty heavily based on like what's commercial and what's not. So for guys that have tried talk therapy and match with a therapist they don't get along with, or like putting feelings into words is too difficult and it's just not their preferred communication, that can be like the end of their investigation.
Yep.
And then you're back stuck and congealed as you said before. So I love hearing about art therapy and time alone in a forest and poetry, reading, group work, individual work is so helpful to just blast that out as like these are options and they're worth trying to see how they feel for you. So I love hearing about that.
Yeah, and it's like talk therapy is like relatively new. I mean, when Freud and like Jung, like I won't get on this too much, but like when Freud and Jung kind of started this, it's like with like traditional psychoanalytic therapy where you lay down on a couch, but there's been modalities that have been going on for centuries that have worked with people. In a lot of cultures, it's like they don't even do therapy, right? They don't do it in the sense that we do it. If you look at like kind of a traditional kind of Western like medical model, and I think part of like the education that some of us have is to just kind of introduce these men to like different types of concepts. And like what you said, Henry, is like beautiful, and I think that's a message we try to get across is how it feels very opportunistic. Like if a man is like taken just for them to get to the group and to start day one is like such a big deal,
Mhm.
and we recognize that. Would like to reach out because the hardest in my experience, the hardest thing for a man to do is to ask is that four-letter word, which is help. And so we almost feel like it's like sacred in a way, and I take it like really fucking seriously in terms of holding that container that feels really sacred And so we want to be careful. It's like what you said is if they have an experience that we really missed the mark on and it kind of questions their safety, they might either retreat and go the rest of their life or go like another year, which, oh, okay, I knew that was going to happen. So that's what we want to do is we want to create kind of a dynamic, holistic environment to like, hey, there's maybe parts of this that challenge you, and we want to say you can lean into that if you want, but there's also other things that we can do here to try to help you. Like we want to say like meet you where you're at.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Like for some people in a certain time in their life, like meditation could be completely overwhelming to just like really just observe all their thoughts. Other people might, no matter where you are, like 30 minutes walking through a park could be like the first introduction to just, all right, I'm unplugged, I'm alone with my thoughts, but I'm moving, I'm doing like something normal with other people who are also walking in the park, but they're not asking me questions. They don't know what I'm thinking about. Like that introductory step to lower the baseline is really important because it's still the activation energy to take the first step of like I'm going to do something for myself that will help me is massive. And so like the lower the bar there, I think the more people, the more guys can like begin the investigation. And then you can kind of do more and more things to further your progress. But I think that menu is super important. So I really like that approach.
Yeah, and it's it's kind of that we try to walk that line too between kind of like holding them for their process and provoking.
Yeah.
That's that thing that we're mindful of and kind of discerning of, and why it's good to have help and other facilitators to kind of pay attention to that of, okay, this we're doing those modalities and this stuff's coming up for you, but like how much do we want to provoke it? Like for example, if
hmm
it's not easy, like I said, and so it's creating that container of safety of knowing that you're going to be uncomfortable, but that may not mean that this isn't for you. It just maybe means that maybe something's coming up for you, and
hmm
we want to hold that and maybe help you kind of investigate it. And
Yeah.
that's that thing that we just get better at over time. Is like, how much do we want to push this person, and
Yeah.
how much do we want to, how much do we want to hold it? Because it kind of goes back to like being discerning with like why certain men are there. Is we always think like I don't know, the expression I always use is like the medicines and the contrary. So like for example is some men might be there because of a lot of aggression, a lot of anger, and a lot of projection. Maybe they've done a lot of things with their physicality they aren't proud of. And so like the medicine for them would be like to embrace tenderness. But we get other men where maybe they struggle with depression. And the hardest thing that like severe depression, maybe the hardest thing for them has been to find their voice. So
hmm
we want to help them stand up for themselves.
hmm
And
Yeah.
does that make sense? And so that's why
hmm
like kind of holding that container, even when these holistic modalities is like, that's why we're looking at the group, but we're also paying attention to each individual because we don't want to if someone has never had the opportunity to speak up, we want to be mindful about provoking them, but having them kind of being tender and kind of having a proverbial hand next to them, be like, hey, you can stand up for yourself. But
hmm
other men, that's the last thing that they need, and
Yeah.
they just need to be like, hey, maybe you just need to like sit back and listen. So
Yeah.
that's the thing we're kind of like moving in and out of each individual within the group.
Yeah. And yeah, it's a balance of between like overwhelming and complacency, like that middle ground of like I'm uncomfortable, but it's because like I'm working on something hard, but I'm not overwhelmed and I'm also not doing just like chilling out. So I think framing it as work is important. Um, but it's like good work for just you. Like I think I've I've felt like both the push and pull of work and effort for like someone else or for money versus work that's like for me, and it feels so different. in terms of like how I feel with the effort and the output. And I think finding that is really cool because then you can kind of compartmentalize a little bit like, okay, this is work I have to do to survive or pay the bills or like advance in my career or like compromise something. But if carving aside space and energy for I'm going to do work that's only for me is so important to balance that out. And I've only recently been figuring that, well, not figuring out, but like trying to realizing that is important. I'll call it that.
Oh man, I just want to copy and paste everything that you said and just apply it to my my life too. Dude, to say I can relate to everything that you just said is so understated. Both like not only within the group, but like personally too. And
Hmm.
that's part of like kind of that archetypal nature that we talk about a lot with these men is how much we carry for other people.
Yeah.
How much a lot of whether it's caretaking, whether it's like being the we talk a lot about this in the group, the warrior archetype, being like the warrior of how much we're doing for others. And one of the kind of ground rules that we have in the group is, and I'm going to generalize, but it say that the hardest ground rule that men struggle with, and it takes about three sessions to get into this is only about how it lands in you. Like this is about you and it's not about anyone else. And that's part of that thing. But I feel like one thing that's so ingrained in our archetypal nature and it's pushed on us as men so much is to kind of point the finger out here to take care of everyone else's stuff and to do all these things. Or a defense that we have is to blame. And
Hmm.
that's part of that thing is like, this is only about how this lands in you and what gets stirred up in you. And that defense is, but they did this and they did that and they did that. But it's like that. This is just a mirror. As one of our facilitators, JD, says, is our job is to be professional mirrors of the men in here. Like it's just every time something comes up, how does that land in you? Well, they did this and they did that. Great. How's that impacting you? Well, they shouldn't have done that and they should have done that. What's that about for you? But it's hard. It's really, really hard when we're just not we're not programmed that way.
Hmm.
We're programmed to always point the finger rather than what is this about for me? Because for a lot of the men that come in here, they haven't taken the time to slow down, to really slow down and look at the mirror, but do it again with a very compassionate and a very curious lens rather than a punitive lens. Because it's not about this is what I did wrong. Because I think like you're bad. We have enough of that shit going on. It's more of like what impact is this having on you in your life, and how is your relationship with yourself impacting everyone else in your life? Because it only comes back to your relationship with you. But thinking of the work is, yeah, like you said beautifully, Henry, we can do all this work out here, but that takes hours for them to realize that this is here to work on you. And it's so deeply programmed and like insidious a lot of the times that it's us kind of like helping them kind of pull out that splinter. Yeah, that's why I say, well, it takes a couple sessions for them to get in that mode of you're here to work on you.
Yeah. Yeah. And
But
it's ignored for a long time. And I think bringing it full circle to you were talking about how broad men's work is. That's really how I think about it. It's just asking the questions to yourself and just looking inwards and investigate, like beginning that investigation of what does it mean to be me? What does it mean to be a man? What does it mean to like the combination of those of like me operating in society and with other people and other men. How do I feel? How does that reflect on me? It's just the process of asking those questions, and they can be different questions for other people, is how I think of men's work, and it can be all those different modalities you brought up, like what does it mean for me to like create and draw and read, and what does it mean for me to be present outside? How does it feel? Like what questions do I ask myself when I'm in that space? And all of it is like time and effort investment that's not going external. It's like coming in. It's like redirecting that energy and work that I think a lot of guys feel like burned out or tired or unappreciated or frustrated or dead end, and you like invert the flows towards you to like fill you up. And so whatever modality that is, like that is the men's work for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. That's that's a much better definition than I gave.
Well, I only give you inspired the words because explaining like the modalities and the like of that effort being work on yourself in the mirror. So yeah, I really like that. Something clicked
Yeah.
on like because like you said, men's work is so broad and so big that it needs a big broad definition.
It does. And um we kind of look at it as like, okay, what, and we're shifting it every time. Of looking at, okay, well, we want to keep like a beacon here. Like if we have like a destination of where is this group going, is we know that if we're too broad, that they could walk away a little bit dysregulated. Like, okay, all this stuff got kind of pulled and sussed out, but we don't want to
Yeah,
leave. It's uh like in the, I'd call it like the psychedelic therapy world. It's like integration, right? That's like huge. And we look at it as we want to help these men kind of investigate stuff that's going on, but we also want to help them be able to leave with like a really strong sense of self and like that kind of embodied confidence and support from other men.
yeah,
So I would equate it to like we always call it like imagine their consciousness or their self or like children's blocks. Like the first set, if we do it in a session of four, it's like the first one is kind of like taking them apart and putting them on the ground. The second one's looking at them. The third one's putting it back together, and the fourth is kind of reinforcing them and kind of helping them kind of move along.
yeah,
And we always keep that in mind of like that's where we're going this session. Because if not, we don't want to just like point a bunch of, and we don't want them to be reliant on us either. Does that make sense? Like
totally. Yeah,
we don't like, because that's like the hard thing is like, yeah, we charge money for it, but we're not like, we don't want to be reliant like, oh, sign up for the next phase. Like
mhm,
I get a really bad taste in my mouth with that kind of stuff. And so I just want to look at it as if you could just come in here and learn something deeply and move forward with a deeper understanding of yourself, then uh, like one of my mentors said, like, what's a win for you in these groups? I'm like, well, if they can just like walk away with an understanding from a compassionate lens of this is why I do the things that I do, and I have an idea of what I can do moving forward, then like that's a win for me, rather
yeah,
than saying like, we'll sign up for, our gold tier. It's like
yeah.
that's not my vibe. It's not how I live my life.
Yeah. Well, I want to be mindful of your time, but I also just want to say like I'm so appreciative of your work because like you said, it's a responsibility. It's also like sacred in that it's just a lot of uh like powerful work that does take structure and facilitation and has a ton of nuance and is fraught with like the human variability of getting a bunch of people doing hard work together, paired with like you do work and need to be compensated for your effort and skills. Like you walk that line too, and like the model and the structure, and like the personal weight of seeing hard work being done is also hard work that you have to do and do your own process. And we could have a whole nother hour on how you handle that personally as a therapist, but just very appreciative of the attention and thoughtfulness that you put into the men's work, and it's just I'm really glad you're out there.
Oh, thank you, man. That's very kind of you to say. Well, I'm really glad that, I mean, I'm glad that you're out there and you're illuminating um, kind of different people that are involved in this work. Is I don't know. I think passionate is kind of probably an understated word for me. It's just kind of I love doing it. I don't know.
Yeah.
Um, I think anyone that kind of comes like is interested, or anyone that wants to come in, is just like, you're not alone, and all is welcome here. Because I know, I always felt like an outcast, like as a kid. I always felt like, I don't know, like different. And I always want to say that, yeah, like no matter what your background is, like all is welcome here. And yeah, I got to do my own work too, man. I gotta clear my stuff. I gotta clear my stuff out. I mean, I go to my own therapy. I have my own men's group that I go to, where I can just like, it's like like I take and take stuff in, and I have to like release. I have to release it too, so I can do this work. Because
Yeah.
if I don't release it, I mean, I'd be an absolute mess. So
Yeah. We all have our stuff.
how did you get involved? How did you like get so interested in this? I'm curious about you.
The origin story was back in 2019, maybe 2018. So I was like 20, 21, and I have a younger brother who's my best friend, and he was 17, 18. And in the span of a year, just lost like five friends close to us. And it was just a really hard year. And it was for all the young men reasons, like overdose and suicide and drug violence and hazing deaths, like really, really tough year. And it just felt very overwhelming and tail spinning. And I knew nothing about men's work or the statistics, but it was like clear something was happening to young men, and started just recording friends and family on Zoom talking about their mental health, and just did that for a few years. And then COVID, it kind of took off into something more external than just like family friend conversations, or like anyone who would talk to us, and started getting inbound requests like, hey, this is cool. Like, I want to share what I'm working on. And we kind of got more champions, and like, okay, this person wants to talk to us about how he beat like his body image issues, and this person wants to talk about their relationship with their dad, and kind of champions of like, I struggled with this, and these are the strategies I did to feel strong enough to share with the community. Um, but yeah, that was the orange origin story, just kind of like a anecdotally really difficult year, losing people close to us for I don't know, like the statistically young men reasons, and just prompted like we have to do something, and we didn't really know what to do. But the conversations, like putting vulnerability on display, felt like novel and impactful, both in terms of like giving a space for guys to come on and share, and then to just see it in like a super free, passive way of like, you're scrolling and then you see someone talking about something that you don't see guys talk about: porn addiction or sexuality, or yeah, father-son relationships, or loneliness, and just talking about it and making and like normalizing it. And COVID also brought like, I don't know, we also take up space online that is kind of counter to pipelines that can be more harmful for young men looking for answers, like either looking for mentors or looking for examples of like what is real masculinity. And so we try not to like define it, but just prompt the questions. So yeah, that's the origin story.
Beautiful, man. Yeah, I think that's what we always go back to is, we were originally going to have this like as a theme. Like for our first one, we called it deconstructing masculinity, but now we always talk about that at the very beginning. Like,
Yeah.
what does that mean to you?
Hmm.
It's like so important for men to kind of deconstruct what that means to them before they dive into any type of work, so they can kind of let go of, their expectations or what it should look like. But
Yeah.
it's just beautiful what you're doing, man. I mean, I really appreciate it. You're a good guy, man.
No, I appreciate that. But I have all my work too, and it's a total like privilege to like sit here and meet people like you. And yeah, I feel purposeful, and it rocks. Like, and we just have met so many great people, and yeah, we're gonna plug along. and just keep meeting people, keep talking, and keep putting stuff online. And that's all we're gonna do, and just keep going.
Yeah, man, just keep going. A good thing for all of us.
Yep.
Well, yeah, man, I really I appreciate you again. I know it's kind of just like scratching the surface, but even if you ever wanted to talk about anything like do like coffee chats or anything like that, or talk about the stuff offline, like even towards the end you mentioned like subjects, I'm like, dude, this is the stuff I like talking about, like just in general. So if you ever
Totally.
just like want to connect, man, I could each thing that you said, I'm like, oh, dude, we could talk about that all day. So,
Yeah,
um,
absolutely. I would love to stay in touch.
yeah, buddy.
I agree. We could talk for multiple hours on any one of these
Yeah.
like offshoots that we brought up. Yeah, I'm really glad we got to meet. Let's be in touch. What do you think it means to be a good man? What